All right, class. This is definitely not my preferred method of working through the material, and so hopefully we'll build in more discussions, but I think it was worth letting you go last night. And just so you know, as you think about these things, um, these discussions are going to be significant for working through your written assessment, this first little thing that we're going to do at the end of February, because the readings you're getting are just really small snippets of what's out there, and so how we're going to make sense of them in terms of what I want you to come away with is really about the discussion. So I'll try to give you the sense of that um, today, and then hopefully we'll get to talk about and flesh out those other things as we go along. Okay, so mostly we're going to talk about the Geertz reading. The cathedral reading was really just about setting some kind of context for walking around the city. At that point, I also thought we were going to go through the cathedral specifically, but that's immaterial. I'm sort of working to pair one academic reading with something that's a little lighter, easier to read, and just sort of get you thinking about the topic at hand. So that's kind of all I'm after anyway. Okay, so looking at my notes, sorry, I'm going to be looking down because that's who I am. Okay, so today or yesterday, really, the Geertz reading is about methodology. So the groundwork we want to lay, at least at the beginning, is how are you going to do what you're doing out there, specifically with your field journals, which are obviously an ongoing assignment, a specific effort at turning your experiences of Exeter into something that you can analyze, something that you can use as a skill going forward. So this is really about methodology today, if you want to kind of categorize things that way. Just how are we going to do what we're doing? And since you're already out there doing field journals, and I've already commented on them, I wanted to start this way. So, but stepping back from that and just sort of setting the tone, Geertz raises the question about how do we think about culture, and really comes to the conclusion that it's really hard to define. It's been defined in a lot of ways over and over and over again. And he has his own way of defining it that keeps it really broad. So that's really where we want to start, is with his idea of webs of significance. That's one of those key terms. If I was producing a professional video right now, the text would say webs of significance, because that's one of those things that then you need to hang on to and think about. So let's unpack that. So when we think about the second half of that, significance, notice that the beginning of the word is sign. Okay, so, and Geertz mentions that the idea of webs of significance really comes out of the study of semiotics, which is the study of signs. So it's a way in which we produce meaning, or we think about our world through signs. So language itself is built around signs, all those lines arranged in particular ways to make our alphabet, or any alphabet, are really about signs and symbols that we have attached certain meanings to. And so the way he thinks about culture is as a kind of web of these different signs and signals that produce meaning and layers of meaning, which is really the significance of that term web. So later on in the reading, he talks about the piled up structures of inference and implication, or sorting out the structures of significance and determining their social ground and import. So all these things are about kind of how the webs are these multi-layered ways that these objects in our culture, these cultural forms, have meaning. Okay, so again, think about the cathedral. We talked about that in our first class, that what kind of cultural meaning can a cathedral have? Political, economic, religious, historical, and you can unpack all of those, but all of those are interrelated. You can't really separate one from the other. The idea that the cathedral is the place where the bishop's throne is not only significant for the religious faith of the people, but there's a real political component to that. The size of the cathedral, its location, were all statements about power, and of course it required a lot of money and industry and resources to build those things. So there's a lot tied up in the economics, and continues to be for the people, particularly of Exeter or any town where cathedral is still significant. But think about something that's a little closer to home for us all. Think about the word hospital, and then unpack that for a moment in your mind. What are all the things that hospital can mean? We often think of it as a building where you go if you're sick. Maybe for you, it's a place where you are afraid of, or somebody who's close to you died, where you go to get better. But it's also a place where people work, a lot of people, so it's often a central component of a city's life and economics and power. It again has a political power because the health of its citizens and the health of the community is certainly tied to whether or not people want to come there or stay there, whether they believe they're going to be cared for, what kind of amenities they have. So even the word hospital has all these multiple layers of signification, of meaning. So when you think about the word webs of significance, don't think about it as webs of importance, which is one way we use significance, but webs of meaning. So what you're doing out there is just scratching the surface of trying to uncover these different layers and webs of meaning. And the way I've asked you to do that is through Geertz's method of thick description. Now again, when he unpacks that, you might pick up on he gives you these descriptions from his journal, that funny story about the herders and the Berbers. And he doesn't unpack all the different layers of meaning. Partly how he's come to those layers of meaning is not just through describing the events, but through interviews, through studying the culture, things that we really don't have time for and aren't going to produce in this one semester. So your job really is just to sort of scratch the surface with that and stick to description, and then sort of let the layers of meaning come out of that. And I'll sort of demonstrate that with my journal entry. But before you do that, take the example of the Guildhall. So we just walked by the Guildhall. We didn't even get to go in it. You can begin to discern a lot of different meanings just from the outside of it, if you think about it. And you could go back and do significant work in research and just observing what goes on around the Guildhall. So again, it's this historical object that has a lot of importance. They keep telling us that it's the first of this or first of that, so this is the oldest working municipal building in the country, I think is what I remember them saying, what Barry said last night. So they continue to use it for their guild, for their city council. And so there's a significance there, both in terms of its political weight and its historical weight. But also think about where it's located, in the middle of the most important shopping district in the whole city. And so a lot of people just walk by it. Think about even how the portico gets used. I've seen the homeless get shelter there. People set up things and they advertise or give things away. So even that little space can be used in a very significant way that produces a lot of webs of meaning. And so you could, if you were interested, just take several trips down there and make observations, write about what you see, what you experience, what happens down there, and then let the analysis or let the interpretation or the insight sort of creep up through those descriptions, and then you'll see what happens. All right, so let's think about my example for a second. Again, this is just one take on an experience of getting on the bus. So as I wrote about this, I'll just stop at one point. The north side of 4th Street between Market and South has a futon and a camera shop. Right behind the bus stop sits the entrance to a gym and another to a bargain store. It is decidedly urban for a smallish city. The sidewalks are clear but not especially clean in this block. People move about along the sidewalk and between the 3 bus kiosks on this short block, shoppers, homeless, young men hovering about the gym entrance, and people just passing through. So I am trying to give some color and significance, or color and description to what I'm seeing. I could go into a lot more detail in terms of the sounds, in terms of the smells, in terms of the cold that I'm experiencing at the same time. So this is just scratching the surface. An old woman leaning on a walker, clutching a plastic shopping bag in one hand, gripped around the handle of the walker, exits the bargain store and passes us as we veer towards the bus stop. Now that has more significance to me than it might seem, and why I chose to describe it, because part of what I tend to focus on, and I think what I would do in any kind of further analysis, is focus on the relationship between spaces like this and the experience of people with disability. I come to that through my parenting of Will and through some of my other research. And so I tend to think about things from a lens like that. So I noticed the walkers the strollers, the wheelchairs a lot in this city, and I pay attention to how people are living. I don't tend to see those in my hometown in Lakeland a lot. I don't tend to see them in Tampa. Our cities are not really well built for pedestrians or as large shopping districts like that. But so that's a point of interest for me that could produce further analysis, but I would wait and continue to describe things. So as I go on, I think the middle kiosk is for bus A. We have confirmed this route and location a couple times, but I double check. The woman next to me looks over at Will and smiles but says nothing. She seems unfazed by us or by the bustle. Several of you talked about I guess you feel like it's a more reserved culture where people don't interact. Well, maybe that's true, or maybe I don't find that in the States people necessarily in public places interact or engage a lot. But maybe you guys feel like it's that way. So that again could be a point for further analysis and description, that you would go to public places and just attend to and describe the experience of being with and near people and how they respond to you and how they respond to each other. So anyway, I'm not going to keep reading, but you can see all I'm doing there is unpacking the possible webs of significance without trying to attach too much analysis or answering the why question in much detail, maybe just raising questions that could be for further research, further exploration. So again, we're just going to scratch the surface in this class. That again is why I chose to make your final assignment a creative project rather than some kind of significant analysis, because you don't have time to do those initial forms of research, archival, or do interviews, do statistical analyses. That's not the point here. The point is to just get a single skill and encourage you in your observation of things. And whether you're in the sciences, most of you are brushing up against that in some way, although this is a pretty diverse group. Having better skills at being able to describe what your experience is going to help you wherever you go, for sure. So, getting back to Geertz then he unpacks what thick description is, and really thick description is the sum total of all those things. So don't think in terms of your writing that you have to describe every detail. Remember that part of what develops in the process of learning about the culture, and you will gain more insight in just conversations you have about the way things work, and that will then inform your writing in a way that your descriptions will be thicker. You don't have to worry about that. So again, he's talking about picking through piled up structures of inference and implication. You're just going to kind of be working through that, and I think you'll be surprised at how that works for you. So that's really what I wanted you to get through Geertz, is just the sort of nebulous, hard to define thing culture is, and that as a result, what we're looking for are these layers of meaning, the webs of significance, and to be okay with a lot of ambiguity in that, not be bothered that we don't have some particular truth or fact to pinpoint, but to sort of let things kind of come to us. Okay, so a little bit more practical information before I wrap up. I addressed this last night briefly, but I just want to say again, answering the question, what do I write about? Write about anything. Write about all of it. Write about the same thing over and over again. You just figure out what works for you, and don't even try to come to your writing with an agenda other than to produce at least 750 words a week and write a discussion post and make sure you respond at least twice to others. So stop trying to make it about something and just write. Identify places for further analysis if you want to, but don't get bogged down in that. And this is a general rule that I learned a long time ago. If you try to say everything, you end up saying nothing at all. So don't worry about trying to explain everything. Focus in on some particular detail. I could have spent more time just sort of observing the woman with the walker and just really seeing what that was like for her walking through the city. Not that I would be a stalker, but you can spend more time on particular details and just see how that works for you. So, and remember in your writing that the goal for this course is to explore culture and not just your feelings. So as you develop in your writing and thinking about what you're dealing with, um, always think in terms of your feeling as it relates to out. So out there and what is happening in terms of your experiences of it. So definitely include your feelings. I talk a lot in my post about our insecurities, but try to expand beyond kind of a diary entry into, again, thinking about how your feelings, maybe that would be a point to interrogate. How are my feelings right now related to my circumstance, and can I describe what it is about my circumstance that may be producing these feelings? So think about that you are going to grapple with what's in order, and as it relates to what's out. But certainly do include that. Okay, so I think that's all for now. So a little prep for this coming week. We are planning to walk down the river. I don't think the weather's going to be as nice. Ha ha. I think it may be a little wet, but we'll gauge that. I do have a plan for an inside activity if it is too wet, but if it's just a little wet, we're still going to go out. So please make sure you're prepared for that in terms of your clothing and or umbrellas or whatever else you need to do some walking along the river. And so your readings are obviously paired with that. The one reading really gives you some categories again for how to think about the webs of significance, as in the river in an urban setting as an example. And then another is one of my favorite stories of all time, The Wind in the Willows, and unpacks those webs of significance in a much more visceral, personal way. So enjoy that. Enjoy your time. I'm sure there's more I could tell you, but I'm stopping because I've spoken for 17 minutes, and I'll see you next week.